Welcome back. You're joining us for what I think is a really surprising exploration today.
Definitely intriguing.
We're doing a deep dive into this, this development coming out of China. The reported test of a non-nuclear hydrogen bomb.
Yeah, that phrase itself catches your attention, doesn't it? Non-nuclear hydrogen bomb?
Exactly. Because, usually hydrogen bomb means nuclear fusion. So one without nuclear stuff. It makes you pause.
It does, a seeming contradiction.
So for this deep dive, we've looked at some interesting sources, articles from the South China Morning Post, the Economic Times.
And there's also a separate analysis looking at China's, their wider nuclear picture.
Right. So our mission for you today is to really unpack this. What is this weapon? How does it work without being nuclear? And I guess, what does it signal about China's military thinking?
Trying to get past the headlines, basically.
Precisely. Let's get into the core of it.
Okay, so the big news is this claim, right? Chinese researchers successfully testing a hydrogen-based explosive device, but crucially, non-nuclear.
And who's behind this?
It looks like the China State Shipbuilding Corporation's 705 Research Institute, CSSC. The articles mention their usual focus is actually underwater systems.
Underwater weapons. Interesting. So what's the actual tech here? What makes it go boom, so to speak?
Well, the key seems to be this magnesium-based solid-state hydrogen storage material. It's called magnesium hydride.
Magnesium hydride.
Yeah, the SCMP describes it as looking like a silvery powder. Sort of unassuming, really.
The silvery powder. Okay, but you mentioned storage. The articles say this wasn't originally for weapons at all.
That's right, and it's a key point. Both sources stress that magnesium hydride was initially looked at for peaceful applications, storing hydrogen for fuel cells.
Fuel cells, like for clean energy.
Exactly. Bringing power to off-grid places, potentially. It's incredibly good at packing hydrogen densely, much better than, say, pressurized tanks.
So they took this energy storage material.
And they found a way to weaponize it. Essentially turning that stored energy release into an explosion.
Okay, so how do you get from this powder to a massive explosion? It can't be simple.
No, not at all. The activation, according to the research reported in the sources, uses conventional explosives.
Like a standard detonator.
Pretty much. Think of it as the trigger. It causes this really rapid thermal decomposition, a breakdown of the magnesium hydride.
And that breakdown releases hydrogen.
Massive amounts of hydrogen gas very quickly. And hydrogen gas explosions, they have some unique properties. Wang Shofeng, the lead researcher, pointed this out.
Unique how? What does that look like?
Well, hydrogen ignites really easily, needs hardly any energy. Plus, it can explode across a wide range of concentrations in the air. And when it goes, the flames spread outwards incredibly fast.
Okay, fast flames.
Yeah.
What's the result?
The result, highlighted by both the SCMP and Economic Times, is this intense fireball. We're talking over 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's 1,800 Fahrenheit.
Wow, that's hot.
Extremely hot. And crucially, this heat lasts more than 2 seconds, apparently.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
How does that compare to, say, TNT?
Big difference. That sustained heat is reportedly about 15 times longer than the flash from an equivalent amount of TNT.
15 times. Okay, that's a huge difference in heat duration. But what about the blast itself, the force? PNT has that shock wave.
Good question. The Economic Times mentioned some test results. Peak overpressure was measured at 428 kilopascals at 2 meters.
What does it mean?
In simple terms, it's about 40% of the immediate push, the blast force, you'd get from the same weight of TNT.
So less initial blast.
But much more significant, prolonged heat damage. That seems to be the key characteristic. They mentioned something called a self-feeding combustion loop.
Self-feeding. Sounds like it keeps itself going.
That's the idea. The heat from the initial hydrogen ignition sustains the decomposition of more magnesium hydride, releasing more hydrogen, which burns, creating more heat. You get the picture.
A vicious cycle of intense heat.
Exactly. Leading to this prolonged, incredibly hot fire over potentially a larger area that has big implications for the type of damage it causes.
Right, okay. So less about shattering things instantly, more about melting them. Sustained incineration.
Precisely. Which leads us to potential military applications. This isn't replacing a nuke, obviously.
Clearly not.
Yeah.
So where would you use something like this?
Well, the sources suggest some specific scenarios. That sustained heat could be very effective for area denial, think in incinerating roads or runways to block access for a significant time.
Making them unusable.
Right. Or for precise targeting of critical infrastructure. Power stations, communication centers, fuel dumps, things where sustained heat could be particularly destructive.
And the melting aspect you mentioned.
Yeah, the Economic Times points out that prolonged, intense heat is good at melting materials like aluminum alloys. Think aircraft, vehicles, structural components.
It's a different kind of destruction. More targeted, maybe.
It seems that way. It positions this as part of China's interest in what they call energy-based weaponry. Precision strikes, perhaps without the massive blast radius of, say, a large conventional bomb, limiting collateral damage in some scenarios, potentially.
Okay, now, you mentioned magnesium hydride earlier. Producing it used to be hard, right? Because it's reactive.
That's right. Both articles touch on this. Historically, scaling up production was tricky and potentially dangerous because the material reacts readily.
So what changed? How did they make enough for weapon development?
Investment, basically. China has reportedly invested significantly in overcoming these hurdles. The Economic Times mentions a new facility in Shaanxi province.
A dedicated production plant.
Apparently, with a capacity of 150 tons per year, which sounds like quite a lot.
That's a big jump. Was there a tech breakthrough involved?
It seems so. The Dalian Institute of Chemical Physics developed what's called a one-pot synthesis method.
Warpot.
Yeah, in chemistry, it basically means you do the whole reaction process in a single vessel. It simplifies things hugely.
Makes it safer.
Cheaper. Both. Safer, more cost-effective, and much better suited for mass production, which, you'd need for military applications
Or other things. You mentioned fuel cells earlier.
Exactly. The Economic Times suggests this scaled-up production could also feed into other areas, powering submarine fuel cells, maybe, or long-endurance drones.
So this material could be dual use, powering next-gen systems too.
It certainly fits a pattern. This connects back to China's broader military modernization strategy. They seem increasingly focused on integrating clean energy tech.
How so? What other examples are there?
Well, the Economic Times points to things like upgrading warships, the Type 055 cruisers with electric propulsion, and developing greener aerospace propulsion, like that methane-powered rocket launch in 2023.
So this non-nuclear hydrogen weapon, it's potentially part of a larger energy tech push in their military.
It looks that way, leveraging advanced energy technologies across the board, not just for propulsion, but now potentially for ordnance, too.
And the timing of this news. The Economic Times brings up the context of Taiwan. Is there a connection?
The timing is definitely noted. Tensions in the Taiwan Strait have been high, with increased Chinese military activity. Beijing sees external support for Taiwan as a challenge.
And they've been running large drills.
Yes, including live-fire exercises, as mentioned in the source. China maintains a firm stance against interference. While this weapons development likely took years, its announcement happens now, in this tense climate.
Meanwhile, the U.S. has reaffirmed support for Taiwan.
Right. Continued military aid, joint exercises. It's a very complex, very sensitive geopolitical situation. Any new military capability gets scrutinized, understandably.
Indeed. Okay, let's shift slightly. We also have that analysis on China's nuclear ambitions.
Yeah.
How does this non-nuclear weapon fit alongside their nuclear strategy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The analysis we looked at paints a picture of significant nuclear expansion by China.
How significant?
Well, it estimates over 600 operational nuclear warheads now, making them the third largest nuclear power.
Third largest. And it's growing fast.
Apparently so. This aligns with a Pentagon report from 2023 that projected China could hit over 1,000 warheads by 2030. That suggests a really accelerated buildup.
Wow. What's driving that acceleration? Just numbers or capabilities too?
Capabilities as well. The analysis mentions advancements in delivery systems, new ICBMs, for instance, intercontinental ballistic missiles.
The long-range ones.
Right. And reportedly equipped with MIRVs, multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles.
Meaning one missile can hit several targets.
Exactly.
Oh.
Which increases their strike potential and makes missile defense much, much harder for an adversary.
So, a more potent nuclear force. Does the analysis suggest any change in how they think about using these weapons, their doctrine?
It points to a potential shift, or at least an evolution. China officially has a no first use policy.
Meaning they wouldn't strike first with nuclear weapons?
Correct. But the analysis notes the deployment of things like solid-fueled missiles in silos, which are more responsive, and sea-based deterrence patrols, submarines with nuclear missiles.
More survivable systems.
Right. And the suggestion is this might indicate a move towards a more ready, perhaps a launch-on warning capability, enhancing the credibility and survivability of their deterrent. It's a nuanced interpretation, of course.
So while they're developing this powerful non-nuclear weapon, they're also significantly upgrading their nuclear forces and possibly tweaking their stance. How does the region react to all this? India, for example.
The analysis specifically mentions India is watching closely, understandably. China's nuclear growth and these new conventional capabilities like the hydrogen bomb, they have implications.
So India is responding.
Reportedly, yes, prioritizing longer-range nuclear systems capable of reaching China. But the analysis also notes India remains confident in its own deterrence capabilities. It just shows how these developments ripple outwards, affecting regional security calculations.
Okay, a lot to digest there. Let's try and synthesize this for everyone listening. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, first, China seems to have successfully tested a potent new non-nuclear weapon using hydrogen combustion via magnesium hydride. It's a big step in energy-based weapons, focusing on sustained heat rather than just blast force.
And this was enabled by breakthroughs in producing that magnesium hydride material.
Exactly. New, safer, more scalable production methods were key. That's takeaway one.
Okay, second point.
This fits into China's broader military modernization. We see this increasing focus on integrating advanced, sometimes clean energy technologies across their military propulsion and now potentially weaponry too.
Right. It's part of a bigger technological push. And finally,
this is all happening alongside a major expansion and modernization of China's nuclear arsenal. And within a tense geopolitical climate, especially regarding Taiwan, it's a multi-layered picture of China boosting its military power across different domains.
So putting it all together, this powerful non-nuclear hydrogen weapon emerging at the same time China is rapidly growing its nuclear forces. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Sure, it certainly does.
What does this combination suggest about the future of deterrence, about how conflicts might be fought? What new questions does this raise for you, our listener, about global security, about innovation in defense? Definitely something to keep thinking about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.